Hello and welcome back to this channel. In this video, as I promised, actually 2 videos ago, I will be talking about LFOs and, well, mention a few things about them, interesting things that are peculiar to Vital's LFOs, and a bunch of things which I like and some I really don't. Seems like writing feature requests on Vital page isn't too effective. Hopefully this will get to the right ears. So let's start from the very basics and then let's get more complex on the way. For the basics, what is an LFO? Low frequency oscillator, that's what it's an acronym for. In this case, they're not necessarily low frequency because you can get them to be key tracked and send them widely into audio rate territory. It's somehow a legacy of the time, of the analog times, when the only real difference between an LFO and an actual oscillator was in the frequency would go. It will anyway be just some electric oscillation. Here, there's the difference that there's no way of sending the LFO directly to the output, to the amp, and then you can't hear them directly. What you can do is use them to modulate or change the value of parameters over time. So like, for example, if I get an LFO to control, say, the volume of one oscillator, I will get something akin to this. And I have this thing, and I can change the shape of my LFO and have this modulation happen in different ways. Make it faster, and then I have this smooth knob, which is the first of the knobs we're going to talk about in Vital LFOs, which changes. You see here, it's set to the minimum, and then you have this kind of a clicking sound when it goes from the maximum to the minimum because of this ramp shape. If I increase this, that gets less evident, but this shape gets twisted. The actual shape you hear starts to get very different from this one. It would be nice to have a visual feedback of what the smooth parameter does, but yeah, it's not that essential. Anyway, the other thing this knob does, which isn't too obvious at first, is that if you click here, it opens up this fade-in menu. Fade-in means that it's like an attack envelope on our LFO. So it will start acting less, and then it will get more important as time passes, to get to a maximum after a time, which you will know if you go here and you say enter value or whatever. I mean, if you just move it around, you will see how much time it is set to. It is very similar to what this delay knob does, but yeah, different somehow, in that this introduces a fixed delay before it kicks in all of a sudden. Now, I have to say, I think both these things are kind of redundant, because in a way or another, the thing that this LFO misses is an amplitude control. The same that I could say about envelopes, because like if you want to have an envelope be controlled by velocity, which is quite typical, I would just drag velocity to the amplitude of an envelope if I have such a parameter, and here I can't. Same goes here for LFOs. If I had an amplitude parameter, I could do all these things like adding delay or this with envelopes, with other LFOs which can be set to envelope mode. So I don't really see how useful. It takes a lot of space in the interface of these LFOs, which should be used otherwise. The same kind of goes for this stereo knob. The stereo knob, what does it do? Let me lower the volume a bit. The stereo knob makes, or I could actually make this bipolar, which would fix the issue and make it like this. So what the stereo knob does is creating a phase offset between what the LFO does to whatever is happening on the left channel and what happens on the right channel. As you can see, the visual feedback is quite evident. Let me slow this down so it's more evident. You see, it gets wider, and when it's in the middle, they're in the same place. If I move the right and the left, in opposite directions. This too, as I mentioned, is kind of redundant, because if you think about it, here we have this stereo modulation source, or any modulation can be set to stereo. So you could actually just drag and drop one of them on the phase and basically get the same effect. But not really, because this phase slider is a trick one. Here you have this modes, which are, there are several modes. The first one, the default one, is trigger, which you see whenever I play a note, the LFO starts from the very beginning. This is actually quite unusual, as most LFOs, including the one in Serum, for example, like Serum, Zebra, whatever, by default are not triggered when you press a note, but they are so-called free-running LFOs. Since they're free-running, you just get, whenever you play a note, the LFO will be in some point of its phase. They don't do this by default, and there's no mode to set them so that they do like this, but you can easily drag the random note on modulator on the LFO phase slider and have that, for every note you will have the LFO restarting from one random position after the other, which could be critical for some sounds. Now, this slider, as I mentioned, has several functions. Here, if you go for sync, it will work the same way. The difference will be that our LFO will not be synced to when I play a note, but will be synced to the master tempo of our project. Envelope will make the LFO work just once and then will not do anything again. It will just remove itself from existence. In sustain envelope mode, things are slightly different. I mean, apparently it does the same thing, but you see here it's totally static. If I move this like for the end, it plays it and goes here. But see, in reality, it goes up to where this slider is. And if I move this slider, it keeps going again. And yeah, this can create interesting effect. If you modulate the phase in this mode, you can get a bunch of interesting things happening. Then there are loop point and loop hold, which will loop the far part before or the part after the position of the phase slider. So here you see it plays the whole thing and then starts from. This seems useless, but it isn't. It has a bunch of uses, especially when you're making sequences. If you want to have something that repeats itself, I've done a couple of examples of this in the last patch pack I put on my Gumroad. That could be interesting in some way or another. And then there is loop hold, which does the opposite thing. It loops the part before our slider position. Now, these things can be interesting in any ways. You can use them with sequences, and that's quite typical. Or you can do wonderful things with them while keeping key track mode. But I will have an interesting example patch to show this later on. Another thing you can do with LFOs, which is quite unusual, is that you can send them to freeze. So a frozen LFO doesn't move. It doesn't move at all. Nothing happens. If I move this, see, this is modulating our volume and negatively. And why isn't this? Yep, no, this. If I move this thing around, why isn't the thing it is modulating moving? Oh, because it is in loop hold, sorry. So you see, I can turn this into a static parameter that is mapped to something else. And that something else can mean a lot of stuff. And that means that since we have 8 LFOs, it's not just 4, you have 8, you can go to the matrix and find out, or you can just assign LFO 4 to whatever, and then 5 and the others will appear. The thing is, you can turn basically an LFO into a 5th macro. Or, you can have 8. So if you're really not using LFOs, you can make a patch with 12 macros. And this I got from Data Broth's videos. I suggest anyone playing around with Vital to check out his videos. He's really great. He does also a bunch of videos about other synths. And also there's a nice video by Dash Glitch about the topic. He made a nice, interesting add-on to that, mentioning how you can use this to create patch snapshots, which, well, you can do with macros too. I mean, it's more about the mode remapping thing than about LFOs. So going back on track, what else here? There is that I had those 2 patches I wanted to show you for demonstration purposes. So there is this bells. Here, what did I do with these bells? I have this slider. This is a key track LFO. These bells, how is this patch made? Well, I will put it for free on my Gumroad, as I mentioned, so you will check it out personally. But anyway, the point is that there is this LFO, which is modulating the phase of oscillator 1. So it's basically it's basically a simple phase modulation PM, or well, what's some other called FM improperly, and it is also modulating the volume. So it's also doing amplitude modulation, but there are two different mappings for those, and so the result is this. You see here is set to be 8 sine waves, while this one here is set to be, I don't remember, like a lot more, 16 probably, yes. So, but I have used this phase knob, which is mapped to the LFO phase, but also to the pitch of this LFO and to the modulation 4 amount, which is the amount of modulation from envelope 3 to our modulation 4 amount. Yes, it's the modulation, the amount of envelope 3 of modulation 3, which is the oscillator 1 phase, which is again that the LFO, the FM I was mentioning earlier. And you can have a lot of change in your sound because of this. Then I also use the smooth, and not only that, I changed a couple of other things, but just the most important thing here is about the smooth. To do this, you see, this one, in this case, is doing exactly what it's supposed to. If I put some smoothness on it, becomes some sort of a buzzing string, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting as a tool for making something which sounds a bit like physically modeled strings, and that's, I mean, like guitar strings, you know, a stringy sound. Doesn't sound like strings at all, I agree. Then I made also this swing sequence to show another interesting thing, because like when you're making a sequence, you have, you know, things straight ahead, and maybe you might want to say, I want to add some swing to this. How do you do that? Well, see, even using our LFOs in this simple way, you know, just as a ramp, find it very, 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 I don't know, I'm missing some superlative adjectives to say this. I mean, it's awesome because like here, if I'm only using this LFO as this, but it is doing lots of different things. I mean, here it is playing the kick pitch, the kick volume, it is doing, and also a bunch of other things, which is like the sample level, which at the time, you know, here it is doing something different. It's like, it's the hi-hat. And then also a bunch of other things. I mean, it's great. Then I have this LFO5 here, which is the swing thing I will mention later. Now, LFO3 is doing something very similar to this, just on a bar instead of just half a bar. Like if I take LFO1, for example, and I had a point here, I have split this in two. Now I can, for example, say, add some curve here, and this will have this sensation of swinging from for everything that is modulated by LFO1. There's things which come from LFO3, like this sort of congas, glass jars, whatever they sound like to you, and which are controlled by LFO3. Now, the thing is, I can do this manually and add points, but the point will become that, you know, if I wanted something like a global control for swing, I cannot do that. I cannot map anything to the position of a point in an LFO like I could do in Serum, and like I probably will be able to do not exactly this, or maybe something else, like, I don't know, whatever. I heard there's something going on. Unconfirmed sources told me that they're working on making LFOs more flexible. They already are a lot flexible. I mean, in reality, you could do something like this, just making a crossfade, like saying I'm modulating twice a parameter with the same LFO, and then having two different mappings, and then add a macro to say crossfade between one and the other modulation. And well, it's not exactly that, but it will do a bit of that job. Now, the thing I was mentioning here, swing. Here, what did I do? I'm using LFO5, which is set to be 1 bar, but I'm using it with two different mappings. One, which is like 4, one which is it's 4 signs, and the other one which is in 8 signs. I'm using these to, let me open this again because I removed that modulation and it's a small detail. Now, and these, what do they do when I turn this swing knob? They make, you see that LFO here is not moving as linearly as it used to, and I can put less of this or go the other way. And so I made a swing knob for my LFOs, and I found it really, really cool. All it takes is another LFOs. You got 8. I mean, there's plenty. So I think with this, I think I have said everything I wanted to say about LFOs. Oh no, there is one thing. There's talking about the frequency here. You know, here, the frequency of LFOs, I can do a lot of things. Let me get back to an init patch. But you know, I can do a lot of things here. I can change the tempo of those. I can go and put them in seconds. And here I can change this continuously or so, which is great. I can get to tempo dot kick tracked, as I mentioned, but you see these three are mutually exclusive. So I can have, say, 30 seconds, 32 bars, I mean, and then I can make it fast and go by powers of 2 and, you know, half the time every time up to 64ths, but I can only go for powers of 2. Then I can go to powers of 2 multiplied by 1.5. I can go by powers of 2 tripleted, but I cannot do anything else. So I could actually do a slightly different tempo, like, for example, if I go for a bar or something like this, okay, I've got a bar and I'm saying this is 8. I'll say I'll get this to be loop point, or no, loophole, sorry. I'll get it to loophole, and then, I don't know, let me modulate something with it, like a pitch. And then I say I got this thing here. Less volume, I barely want to hear it. This thing, for example, I can put it to be at 7. You know, I can divide 1,000 by 7 and get that number, and so I will have it to do like 7/8 or like 5/8, which is well cool, but or 3/4, which I could do with the tripleted. I mean, or with the dotted. I mean, but I can. That's the only way I can get a different measure, and I have a very hard time moving from one to another. Like, and you know, like, because if I move this in time, what happens is the shape of my LFO will change as well, which might not be what I want, and or it could get really kind of messed up, and I'm really not a fan of this, and this is why I'm saying it. You see, also I might want, when I'm making a sequence or something, I might want to speed it up or slow it down continuously, and I can't, because if I make a sequence and I want it to basically be clocked, I have to stay on one of these, and maybe there is a way, there's a complicated algorithmical way through the mod matrix to get to it. If you think of some way to do it, please let me know. I could do that using the tempo and then remembering, you know, setting a default, which is fine in an integer relationship with my song tempo, but it will still be, you know, a workaround. It's not natively easy. It is not natively easy on many other synths. I mean, I like it a lot in Zebra because it is natively easy, but it has other problems, other issues, other points where it's other shortcomings, I'd say, compared to these LFOs. Well, now I said really everything I wanted to say, at least, and thanks for your attention. If you bore with me all this time, you probably really like to hear me talking, so I ask you, please subscribe to the channel, leave me a like, leave me a comment, and check out on my Gumroad the 2 patches I showed in this, and maybe something else. I haven't uploaded them yet, but I will do it soon, and so if you want to, you know, check them out personally and see what's what. So, well, and also in the description you will find links to Deep Tan's production, which we've provided a bunch of interesting audio-related services and one-on-one mentoring, and a bunch of other links. Well, I don't know, check them out if you feel like. And then, bye again. Thanks for your attention. See you in the next video.